Good evening. Grace and peace to you. For a few minutes, I thought we would talk about a pilgrim's progress. Now, that title, I didn't think we could get a song like that, but you got one for us. Had the word pilgrim in it. and it's about a journey. You know, when you hear the word pilgrim, you probably think about maybe those people that landed in Massachusetts in 1620 and they wore black and funny-looking hats and a white breastplate of some kind on them, either there or on their back. Or maybe you think about John Wayne. You know, somebody comes out from the east to the west and he meets them somewhere and he tells them, well, pilgrim, you don't know. You know, that's what a pilgrim is. That's what a pilgrim is. He's a person in a strange land. And when you get to the derivation of the word and the etymology, it comes from two parts. One means for and one means land, and it means going to a land you hadn't been to before. And so that's what a pilgrimage is. I think it got its connotation maybe as a spiritual journey when you look at the Canterbury Tales maybe. You know, they're traveling and they're going to a shrine. And so we get the word attached to the word of traveling as a foreigner to a strange land. We also attach the idea that sometimes it's to a shrine or to some kind of place that has religious significance. Let's turn to John, the 9th chapter. And the pilgrim we want to look at is the blind man in John 9. But down in the middle of that story, Jesus gives us this statement in John 9 and verse 39 when he's talking about the pilgrim's progress that he's making. He says, "For judgment I am come into this world, that they which see not might see, and that they which see might be made blind." Now, when you think about that, it's kind of strange what Jesus is saying here. You know, that Jesus is the light of the world. He's come into the world to give light to everybody. But it's not that way. It doesn't happen that way. To some, he brings light that are blind, and they can now see. And to those who are seeing, they are blind, and they're in darkness, and they don't see anymore. They're smitten with darkness, and that's a startling truth, but that's the text of this story. And when you get into the story and you read the whole thing and the characters come out for you, you see this. What's the problem here? The heavenly winds are blowing the same way all the time. And they strike the hearer all the same. But to some, the wind comes to them and it brings them to darkness, and some it brings to light. Now, why is that? And I think it's the set of the sails in the individual, isn't it? And so some turn theirs to darkness rather than to light. And so this man, he's got a journey to make here. So let's look at him. It's the blind man that's in John 9, and they're coming out of the temple. And as they come out of the temple, there's this blind man sitting there begging. Because, of course, he has no living. He has no way of making a living. He's blind. And so the disciples say something to Jesus, kind of different too. They said, "Lord, who made this man blind? Was he blind because of the sin of his mother and his father, or was it his sin? Who was it? Was it him or was it them?" And so begins this story. And so we look at this man. When you look at him, there are three views about him. The first view is that of his neighbors. When they see him, you remember what they said when he came back from being from the pool of Siloam? And they said, who is he? Why? Somebody said, well, he's the blind man that sat and begged. That's all they said he was. He was just a blind man who sat and begged. A human parasite, incarnate uselessness, a living handicap. He sat and begged. That's all they had of him. That's all they could see as the neighbors. The disciples, well, they're friends of Jesus, and so when they come and they see the man and they come by him and they pass him and they say, Lord, who? It's for them, he's just a theological discussion. Let's talk about what is the origin of evil in this world. Why did these things happen to us? It's a theological discussion they make out of him, nothing more. They don't ask for a cure. They don't ask Jesus to cure him. He's cured many a blind person already. But they don't ask for his curing. It's a discussion. He's a specimen. He's Exhibit A. And they're ready for an autopsy. And it isn't to give him life. They don't care about his death. But now when Jesus sees him, the neighbors saw him a beggar. The disciples saw him, he's a theological discussion. But for Jesus, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man. He not only just saw a man, but he saw one that was possessed with amazing possibilities. And he was going to help him with it too. He saw one that was capable of very good courage, of extreme loyalty, a man worthy of going to the Calvary to redeem him. He saw a man who suffered, not born of sin. He's not suffering because of sin, but he's suffering because of he's going to be enriched beyond measure. We get to a passage down in there, he says, these are the works of God that might be made manifest in him. That's why he was blind. Jesus was coming his way and going to change his life and make it everything better. His darkness was soon going to become light, and he was going to enjoy the riches of grace and the gateway we sang about in that song to everlasting life. That was what he was going to get. That was his journey. How did he begin this journey? Well, the first move comes by Jesus, of course. He's the source of our beginning that journey, isn't he? In Revelation 3:20, he says, Behold, I stand at the door and knock, that if any man will open unto me, I will come in and sup with him, and he with me. So he pursues us before we are pursuing him. He's the first step to our recovery, yours and mine, our pilgrimage that we're making, the one that we sang about. How'd you get there? It's what he gave us, that heart hunger. If anybody thinks anything about why am I here, and where am I going, and what am I supposed to be doing, he's going to ask these questions that are eternal, that have to do with his soul. Where am I going? Is there life after death? And he's going to be sought by Christ. So Christ saw great possibilities in this man. So what did he do? Well, he stooped down and he got a little bit of dirt and he spit in his hand and he rubbed it on his eyes. And he said, now you go to the pool of a blind man now. You go to the pool of Siloam. You wash your eyes. When you do, they'll be clear and you'll see. For the first time in your life, you'll see. Now, what would you do? Well, how can I do that? What do you think about it? No. He turned and began to peg his way to the pool of Siloam. You know, when Jesus healed this man, he'd healed others. He'd healed other blind men. You remember one man, he healed him. He rubbed his eyes with the clay and he said, now what do you see? And he says, I see men walking as trees. He said, come here. He rubbed them again and he said, what do you see? He said, I see clearly now. I can see. He didn't do that with him. He didn't do that with this blind man in John 9. Others, he just healed them like blind Bartimaeus. On the way to Jerusalem for that last week, he comes around the River Jordan and up the road, and when he does, he's out of Jordan, out of Jericho, he meets blind Bartimaeus. He cries out, Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. They tell him, hush, 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 you don't need to be talking. He's this man blind and he wants to be healed. And these people tell him that. I find that amazing, don't you? Some people have no feeling for other people. Well, and so for Bartimaeus, he said, what would you have me to do, Bartimaeus? And he said, that I may receive my sight. And he said, you go ahead. You're going to be seen. You'll see now. And immediately he saw. He was seeing. So some he did one thing, some he did another. And with the blind man here, he made the spittle on his eyes, and he told him to go to the pool of Siloam and there wash to see his eyes. You know, he gave him something to do. All of them, the methods may be different, but faith asks for something on our part. Faith is our half of that contract between us and eternal life. He's not told why he used this method here. There's no power in the clay. It's just like baptism. There's no power in the water. That's what Peter said. It's not the washing of the cleansing of the body. That's not where salvation is. That's not where it comes from. That's not what makes it. So it's not that. It's not the method he used. It's something he needed to do tangible for his faith. Did Jesus need to remove himself from the moment? Because he goes and he is away from Jesus at the pool of Siloam when he gets his eyesight. And a lot of other people see him before Jesus ever sees him again. Jesus may have wanted to remove himself from that event for the benefit of the people there. I don't know. We don't know the reason why. But the difference in all of these blind people is the same. There is no difference. They all come to the light and see. So we don't know that here. Faith requires something of us. If I were to meet that man coming back from the pool of Siloam, or going to it, better yet, I'd see this blind man pegging along with that stick, trying to find his way, and he can't tell, but he knows something about the journey, and he begins to move, and he keeps going, and I see him. And I stop him and say, hey, where are you going with all that stuff on your eyes? He said, I'm going to the pool of Siloam to wash it off. Why don't you just wash it here? Because some man told me if I go there and wash my face and wash this off my eyes, I'll see. And I say to him, well, who told you that? What kind of a story is that? That's impossible. And so he says, well, I won't go then. No. He said, I don't care what you think. I'm going to the pool of Siloam, and I'm going to wash my eyes, and I'm going to see. Now, hearing, you and I might laugh at that. How is he going to cure you? You don't know. You're a fool? No. We continue on the journey. He washes his eyes, and the light bursts upon him, and he sees for the first time in his life. Can you imagine? I cannot imagine. That's the beginning of his pilgrimage. What's the next stage of his journey? Well, it's bitter opposition. You just can't, it's just hard to believe that those who see cannot see and cannot see what Jesus has done here. So we watch this man. Watch him here. This is the lesson for us. He's loyal to the light that he has. Doesn't claim to know more facts than facts guarantee. He doesn't allow that what he does not know will make him disloyal to what he does know. He's true to the oracle at all costs. Let's look at this, the contrast of the man who sees and the man who's born blind. It's inevitable. When he goes and washes his eyes and he comes seeing and he's thrown away the cane and he's just walking down there and he's just seeing everything and looking at it, it's inevitable that everybody will gather around him. And so his neighbors, they can hardly believe it. So much so that some say, well, that's the blind man and he's not blind anymore. Others say, no, I know him, but he's not the blind man because he's blind. He's seeing. He can't be that man that sat and begged right in front of their own eyes, but they wouldn't accept it. Sharp contrast. You know, the people we're going to see on those Pharisees when they see him, and there's a sharp contrast between the two. For some, and for those around him, those who believed and who accepted him for who he was, as blind man that could see now, for one, the day grows brighter. But for some, the sunset was coming. It begins to set. Now, why? Why is this the case? Well, it's not because the Pharisees questioned the validity of this miracle. You know, we hear about these stories about people that go to these meetings in our day and age, and there's working miracles, and people are healing, and they're healing them. Well, it would be worthy of us to look at that and see if they really could work a miracle like they say they are, and to investigate it. So often we find that the person is just somebody that's been put in there to act. Be that as it may, whatever it is. Here in this case, you don't blame the Pharisees because they questioned the validity of this miracle. It's perfect right to do that. They had the right to do that. You know, Christianity is not a religion of credulity. Isaiah said in Isaiah 1 and 8 that you and I can see and can know and can study. Come, let us reason together, he says. Let us reason together. Paul in Acts the 16th and the 17th chapter, when he's talking to those people on Mars Hill now, these are people that have no knowledge of God. As he calls them ignorant, but I mean, the word there means you just don't know God. You're worshiping this God here called the unknown God, but he says he's the one who made heaven and earth and all things therein. And because we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think of the Godhead as making like one made by gold, out of gold and silver, and art graven by man's device. So it's reasonable, it's right for the Pharisees to investigate. Because you see, the neighbors all brought him immediately to the Pharisees. When they saw him, and they saw he was a blind man that was now see, they carried him over there to the Pharisees and said, see, look what's happened here. What are you going to say about it? You know, it's not wrong for their investigation. The problem was their investigation was not honest, was it? For the Jews, verse 22 says in this chapter, for the Jews had agreed that if any man did confess that Jesus was the Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue. Now we get that when they begin their investigation, and so they say, well, who are you? And they say, he says, I'm the blind man that sat there. And they said, well, we need some proof of that. So they said, send for his mother and father. So his mother and father come in. They asked them, they said, is this your son? He says, yes, that's my son. They said, well, look, was he born blind? Was he indeed born blind? Yeah, he'd been blind all his life. They said, well, how do you account for that if your son is now? Hold, I'm not part of that. I didn't have anything to do with it. Not very courageous, are they? The record says that the reason they reacted that way was because the Pharisees had said, if anybody accepts Jesus as the Christ, we're going to put him out of the synagogue. So they're not too very courageous. What's their answer? Well, ask him. He'll tell you. He's old enough. He's of age. That's the exact words they say. He's of age, ask him. That's something for them, isn't it? Here there is their son blind 40 years or 30 years or 20, whatever it was, and he's seeing, and they don't even want to exult about it and praise the process that brought him there. And so they tell him, and they say, well, we don't believe that. So they call him back in. They call the blind man back in. They said, we're going to talk to you again. We need some more information. And he speaks very emphatically. And when they get through and they say, well, give praise to God. This man is a sinner. Now, he's talking about the man that healed him. He said, that man is a sinner. You know, Oliver Goldsmith made this statement one time in a poem. He that is convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. That often happens, doesn't it? It was with these people. That was the way they were. They were not going to believe, even though they could see it, even though the neighbors were saying the man was blind and he now can see, even though his mother and father said he's been blind all his life, he now can see. Makes no difference. In spite of all of that evidence, makes no difference to them. That says something about them, about their pilgrimage, about why they can't see when they are seeing. And so the once blind man, when he gives them an answer, he laughs at them. They say, give praise to God. This man was a sinner. So the blind man says to them, whether he's a sinner or not, I don't know. But one thing I know, I was blind and now I see. That didn't sit well with him either. You have a lot of theology. You have a lot of learning about the things in the scrolls, and yet you don't know this. They make a final effort. One more to say, you know, come back and tell us again. Just how did he do that? Just how did he do that? He says, what? Are you going to be one of his disciples? He really begins to make some sarcastic remarks with these Pharisees. He knows they're going to put him out. He knows that, but it doesn't matter to him. Final effort. No. He's not going to do it. And he finally tells them, if this man is not of God, he could do nothing. Now this man is reasonable, like Isaiah asked him to be, and he is understanding, and he is a believer. And they cast him out. And then we come to the final stages of this man's journey. The healed man arrives. He reached this final goal of seeing, spiritually seeing. But that doesn't mean that because he reached this goal, there's no further progress. This man is going to make more progress in life. Spiritual journey. Endless progress. So let's look at this man at this point. Jesus hears that he's and he searches for him. He wants to enroll his friend in the kingdom. He appreciates his loyalty. And he's got one big question for him. Do you believe in the Son of God? Now, it's interesting to watch this man as he finds the blind man who now sees. He gives a superb answer, doesn't he? He didn't say, yes, I believe. He's too honest. He's too sincere for that. What he knows, he stands by. He's going to die by it, no matter what. They can put him out, doesn't matter. Now, that's faith. That's loyalty. He'll not claim a faith that he does not possess. So we hear him. Who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? No conditions, no reservations. Cross involved, doesn't matter. Declares, I'm ready to believe no matter the cost. Just show me the light. Now I will follow. Don't you wish every hearer was like that? How many times have you talked to somebody and they just will not listen? They will not look. They will not investigate. They will not accept. And they keep their seeing what they don't see. Such a one, Christ can reveal himself to the man like the blind man. And so he answers him, you have seen him, and it is he who talks with you. He said that to the woman at the well when she was talking about the Messiah. He said, I am that guy. I'm the one you're looking for. And when he says to this man here, he says, I am the one, the Son of God, and you can believe on me. And what does he say? This big and man falls on his feet, on his knees, and worships Jesus, and he says, Lord, I believe. I believe in the Son of God. I have seen the Son of God now. I've seen him with my eyes, and I've seen him spiritually. I know him. The light that illuminated this one-time beggar blinded the eyes of the Pharisees. Isn't that sad? These people who knew the law, read it, could quote it to you over and over, had it on their phylacteries and everywhere and on their foreheads, but they wouldn't accept it. Loyalty to the truth is given. Jesus says, he that is willing to do his will, he that is willing to do his will shall know the doctrine, whether it be of God or of man. If you really have a heart that says, I want to know what God says for me to do. You see, some people, they will not look at the Scriptures. They will not study the passages with you. They've got an answer already, and they're blind, just like these Pharisees. This gospel, it is most priceless, but it is also most perilous, isn't it? Listen to what Paul said in 2 Corinthians, the 2nd chapter, when he talks about the gospel, about the message of salvation, about believing in Jesus as the Son of God and following him. It, the gospel, this story, is the savor, the sweet smell of life unto life. I live and I will live eternally. And in the same passage it says, it's death unto death. If we will not let Jesus come into our life and quicken our hearts and quicken our life and make us live again, a new creature, to live eternally, then it's death for us to know the truth and refuse to obey it. We're guilty of a sin that there is no forgiveness for. There'll be no forgiveness in this life or in the life to come. There'll be no second opportunities in that. The sin of refusing to hear brings the heartbroken cry of our Lord. When he looked at Jerusalem, you remember that? He's there on the mountain, and he looks down on the city, and he knows those people there are just like all those Pharisees that he's dealt with and talked to. They can see, but they don't see. They can hear, but they don't hear. They're deaf. How many people have you and I met like that? He says, if you had known, when he looks and weeps at Jerusalem, if you had known, even you, at least in your day, the things which belong to your peace, but now they are hid from your eyes. They shall not leave one stone upon another, because you knew not the day of your visitation. They didn't know that Jesus had come. And he comes for judgment, just like he said in that passage we read. Jesus is coming is the judgment of the world. You either hear him or you don't. You either follow him or you don't. And judgment will come. The unseeing may never see. But those who are blind and turn to Him, they see and they will hear eternal reward when they come to the end and that judgment that Jesus speaks about. If you're subject to the invitation of Jesus, we invite you to come as we stand and sing.